Welcome to a four-part series to give you an introduction to both Lean and Six Sigma. If you have registered for our Lean Six Sigma White Belt certification course, you will receive a Lean Six Sigma White Belt certificate once you complete all four modules and pass a final exam. You will see a link to the registration at the end of this course. My name is Kevin Clay, and I will be your program leader for today. Let's get started. Let's briefly go over the course agenda for this module. I'll start out with an introduction to both myself, Kevin Clay, and our firm, Six Sigma Development Solutions Incorporated. I will then tell you a story called The Kicking Coach. I find that this story is a very effective and friendly way to explain what most people think is a complex subject. We will then discuss the synergy between Lean and Six Sigma. I like to think of these two methodologies like the two hemispheres of the brain. Both hemispheres have different functions, but they also synergize. To have one hemisphere without the other could lead to a human body that does not function effectively. One hemisphere is more artistic and tactile. This would be analogous to the Lean methodology, while the other hemisphere is more logical and data-driven, much like Six Sigma. We will then move into and discuss the structure of Six Sigma. This structure or roadmap is called Dmaic. Dmaic stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. The Six Sigma Dmaic process is a powerful method to solve a process problem or many process problems at any scale. We will discuss each segment of the Dmaic and their significance. Let's move on. A question you might be asking yourself is, who is this gentleman instructing us? What are his credentials? Well, excellent question. My name is Kevin Clay, and I am the president of Six Sigma Development Solutions. I am a Six Sigma Master Black Belt and a Lean Master Practitioner. I use the word master lightly because I truly do not think there is one. I find that the more you know, the more there is to know. It is a never-ending learning process. On this slide, you might see my email as well as my personal mobile number. If you have any questions about any of the topics that we cover in this course, please do not hesitate to email, text, or call me. Myself and my colleagues pride ourselves as mentors and teachers that are available to answer your questions. I have had the benefit of being a Lean and Six Sigma practitioner for over 17 years. In these 17 years, I have gained operational experience in many different disciplines. Disciplines such as manufacturing, distribution, processing, finance, retail sales, insurance, healthcare, IT, nonprofits, local and state governments, and many national governments. Myself and my colleagues have experienced many different processes and cultures. This makes us very effective teachers, mentors, and consultants. I have personally instructed over 500 plus change agents across the many disciplines that we have just discussed. I've led over 15 implementations in both domestic and global organizations. I have led or mentored over 80 Six Sigma industrial and transactional projects and facilitated over 110 Kaizen and workout projects for industrial, service, and healthcare environments. How do these credentials benefit you as a student? When my colleagues and I teach the Lean and Six Sigma methodologies, we back up these concepts with real-world stories of how these tools actually work. Comments on our course evaluations follow a consistent theme. These comments basically are, It's like you've been in my facility and you know my organization's problems. Well, we may not have been in your facility, but we have seen many processes with the same issues. I've listened to instructors over and over. I'm going to explain Six Sigma using a story called The Kicking Coach. Let's say that I am the kicking coach for a college team. I got 5 kickers on my staff. My motto is that there are no stars on my team. Each kicker has to try out on Tuesday for the starting position on Saturday's game. I get each kicker to place themselves on the 35-yard line, centered on the goal. I give them each 100 footballs to kick at the goal. Their requirement is to kick between the goal posts. Each football has a tracking device that lets me know where the football passes the plane of the goal. I get the first kicker up, centered on the field goal. His kicks are represented by the green dots on the slide. He kicks 100 footballs at the goal. All 100 footballs go between the goal posts. He has met the requirements of kicking between the goal posts each of the 100 kicks. What can you tell me about the kicker? Is he a capable kicker? He didn't miss any of his 100 kicks. But if you look at each of his kicks, sometimes he kicks high, sometimes he kicks low, sometimes to the right, and others to the left. There is a lot of variation in his kicks. He is accurate at kicking between the goalposts, but he is not precise. Let's skip to the last kicker. He is a kicker represented by the red dots. He kicks 100 footballs at the goal. All 100 footballs go between the goalposts. There is a difference between his kicks and the other 4 kickers. His kicks split the uprights every time. There's little variation between one of his kicks and another. So my question is, who are you going to pick for Saturday's game, and why? Please stop this video and post your answer to Facebook or Twitter using the hashtag SSDSI. Most of my students answer with the 5th kicker or the red kicker. My response to them is, why the 5th kicker? The other 4 didn't miss. The answer I usually get is because he is more precise. I respond, absolutely, he's more precise and accurate. Not only is he more precise and accurate, we can better predict what his kick is going to produce. How did the 5th kicker obtain the capability to kick between the goalposts with little variation between his kicks? I'm sure he had some natural capability, but that will not get him to the level of performance that we see in his kicks. To get to that level of performance, it takes a coach or number of coaches gathering and analyzing data. These coaches film the kicker kicking hundreds of times. Through this data, the coaches identify the key inputs that lead to the kicker's variation, and then through practice, they alter, improve, and optimize those key inputs to result in repetitive kicks that are both accurate and precise. This is the goal of Six Sigma: to understand all of the inputs to a process, and by using data, identify the key inputs causing variation in the process output. Once we find the key inputs, we improve and optimize those inputs to result in a more capable and predictable output. So we get back to this equation. Y is a function of x. The output is a function of all the inputs that create the output. All right, and again, we're looking for that What are those 3 to 5 key process input variables that create that output? Those are the most important variables. All right. Most of your variables, they have a cumulative effect, but we want to find those 3 to 5 really significant variables. If we can optimize, and control those variables, a lot of times, like dominoes, all the other variables that have really a whole lot less effect, but an effect cumulatively, will come into line. And the transformation is amazing. So Dmaic, again, is an acronym for 5 interconnected phases: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Sequential phases. Define has to happen before measure, measure before analyze, analyze before improve, improve before control. In between each one of these phases is something called a toll gate, which is basically a rubric, a number of questions that basically say, have you met all the requirements of this phase before you move to the next phase? And in a company with Six Sigma, there is a structure for projects getting completed that follows this Dmaic and follows where champions use these rubrics to make sure that the belts, the change agents, have completed each of the requirements of each of these stages before moving into the next stage. So again, a very formal methodology, but the methodology really doesn't work that well unless you have that infrastructure in place, whether you have that foundation built. So as the problem progresses through this Dmaic roadmap, the sources of variation, the sources of waste, actually start to show up. And we like to say that the phases act really like a funnel, where all the many things that create the output, the problem, all of the many things that are kind of the inputs that create that are dumped into the top of this funnel. And as they go through this funnel uses these tools, and we are the change as the change agents are that funnel. We use these different tools of this methodology to help us understand at the end, at the improved stage and control stage, those 3 to 5 significant variables that are affecting the process. We improve those and we control those. Therefore, the process becomes very consistent and therefore predictable. So I kind of like to look at this funnel like a race. All right, I like to look at this like a race. So the first part of the race is define. All right, and the define, that's my finish line. That's where I want to be. That's the end goal. All right, define. So who defines what my end goal is? Who defines where I should be, where what I need to be at, where I need to go? The customer does that. They define what is important. All right. So if I'm creating widgets, okay, and I have to create these widgets, I have to create 1,000 a day, but I'm only creating 900 a day. The customer says, I need 1,000 of these a day. All right, but I'm only creating 900 a day. That 1,000 is a customer demand. The customer says that's important. All right, that's my defined stage. And what's very important that comes out of that stage is a charter. All right, it's a plan, and on that plan shows up what the customer thinks is important, what that metric is. And then we get into the measure phase. the measure phase is basically to say, where are we, where is a process now compared to what the customer thinks is important. This is our starting line, all right? This is basically our baseline. This is how we are doing presently. So if we are creating 900 widgets, but we should be creating 1,000, our baseline is 900 widgets. All right, so that leads us to the analyze phase. The analyze phase is, well, what's wrong? Why are we at 900 and not at 1,000? So in this phase is really where we start looking at different tools to analyze why we're at 900 and not 1,000. We're going to use statistical tools to understand that. We're going to use what's called qualitative tools, tools that are root cause analysis tools to understand truly why are we at 900 and not 1,000. Now, once we get through the analyze phase, we should understand what are those 3 to 5 significant inputs, those 3 to 5 significant variables that are keeping us at producing 900 and not 1,000. All right, and when I say 3 to 5, that's a rule of thumb, which means it may not be 3 to 5. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 10. But what are those significant variables? Those significant variables are what in Six Sigma we call KPIVs, key process input variables, And those are what we are going to focus on to improve. So we get into the approve stage, and in the approve stage, this is where we say, how do we improve those KPIVs, those key process input variables? How do we improve those? And how do we optimize those so that we get from that production of 900 to consistent production of 1,000? Now, once we do that, this is the amazing part. We're not going to know that we've gotten from 900 to 1,000 unless we're taking data, unless we're taking numbers, metrics. Right? A very important part of Six Sigma, numbers and metrics. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of look around and say, I think things are getting better. It kind of looks like it. But if we don't have data, we don't have metrics, we don't have what I call the needle, we're not going to see the needle move in the right direction. Now, most people, teams, at this point, get on a high. Now that the process has been improved, now that the ticker tape parades are going on, people are laughing and parties are happening, we get on this high, and we want to keep improving processes. So we kind of skip the last part of this, which is the most important part. And this is control. All right, this is control. This is the point in which we have to control the process to make sure that it does not go back to its original state. All right, go back to its original state. So, in most cases, companies like to control things from the supervisory, the managerial level. It doesn't make sense to me, because the best person to control a process is the process owner. The person that owns the process. So I'll give you an example. You go into a pediatric unit of a hospital. All right, you've got nurses that are sitting at desk, and up in front of them, most hospitals, you'll see that those nurses can watch the metrics of health of all of their patients. All right. They can actually see what's going on with blood pressure, heart rate, etc. And if anything starts to trend out of control with any of these patients, not when something goes out of control, but when something starts to trend out of control, they can see it immediately. And actually, alarms go off telling them, hey, this person is starting to exhibit trends to being an unhealthy environment. Now, why do we do that? Why do we show that to the nurses? Well, number one, because the nurses are the process owners. They're the closest ones to the process, and they can react to get that person back under statistical control in a very short amount of time. So, in most of our businesses, we don't act like that. We wait until the process has a stroke, has a heart attack before we react to it, when it makes the defect. If nurses exist in that same environment, less people would walk out of a hospital. So I tell my students, I tell my companies that I work with, that you should really look at your process like an organism, and look at it like your body. We don't want to wait till the stroke or the heart attack to happen. We want to be able to control and understand the health of our bodies at all times. And if anything starts to go wrong with that, we want to somehow supplement to bring that back into a healthy state. That's the concept of control. We want to control that process and hand that control. That control needs to integrate with that process owner, the one that is closest to the process. In Lean, we say that 95% of what goes wrong at a process can be fixed by the person that owns the process. So that's the whole concept of control. So the structure of Six Sigma, again, going back to the Dmaic, again, interconnected phases: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Define is again where we define what that finish line is. All right. So in this define phase, we define who our customers are. We define what their requirements are, what their expectations are. We defined the process we're focused on, what the boundaries are. This is called the scope. We defined what the why is. Again, most of this is defined in the project charter. Okay, and then we get back to that measure stage. That measure stage is really where we as compared to where the customer wants us to be. Okay, this is where we really start taking data, metrics, where we start understanding where we at presently. Most companies just kind of take a stab at where we are presently, but they don't truly understand in terms of data. So, and the detriment of that is really to understand what the true return on investment is for improving the process. All right, so this is where we start looking at what the capability of our process is presently. One other thing that we determine in this stage is the measurement system, is the way that we're measuring our process presently. Is that even valid? I can tell you that I've walked into many companies. I've solved many problems. My colleagues have solved many problems, and a lot of times it's not the process that's a problem, but it's the way that we measure the process. So all of a sudden we might be saying that bad things are coming out of this process, and it might be worth millions of dollars of rework, of things that we have to do to mitigate defects. And then all of a sudden, when somebody starts to question the way we're measuring it and to find out that the measurement system is wrong, we go back with the improved measurement system and start to measure some of those previous bad things. And guess what? We find out that they're not bad. We find out that we've wasted millions of dollars mitigating defects of a process that really wasn't creating a lot of defects. All right, so that's really important part of the measure stage, is to develop or to verify that measurement system. Once we understand where we are currently and where we should be, again, we go into that analyze phase to help us understand why do we have the gap. All right, help us to understand why we have the gap. The improve phase. Once we understand that gap, now we start using our knowledge. And when I say our, I'm not saying the green belts, because the green belts, your job is not to suggest improvements. Your job as a green belt. Now a white belt, this is not your job as a green belt. As a white belt, you're going to be the process owner, and you're going to see the data is going to lead you somewhere. Going to tell you, hey, this is where we should focus to improve these inputs. The green belt is then going to ask you, how do we do that? Because if the green belt says, hey, this is how we should improve the process, then you as the subject matter expert, as the PhD of the process owner, you're not going to take ownership of that. It's your process. You know how to improve it. The job of a change agent is to collaborate with you to get that data, understand that data, and let the data tell us, both the change agents and the white belts, what should we do to improve it. And then we get to the control stage. All right, this stage is all about putting things in place to make sure that we do not revert back to the old way. If this stage is skipped, the old way will eventually be the way that you do things. We don't like to change. We don't like this word change, and a lot of us, even subconsciously over time, will go back to the old way. And let's talk about Lean and Six Sigma. Lean and Six Sigma. So I told you earlier that Lean and Six Sigma are kind of two halves of the same brain. So we've got one side, which is very tangible, very visual, very easy to understand, almost artistic, and the other side is really more about quantitative data, about empirical methods. All right. So lean is really about speed. Lean is really about speed of market, speed of the process, taking that complexity out of the process. Six Sigma is really about that consistency, that predictability, how to consistently create the same thing and create a consistent product that consistently meets the customer's requirements. Now, one without the other doesn't make sense. Quality without speed doesn't make sense. All of a sudden, if I have quality and quality impedes speed, because I put more vetting steps in place, I put more controls in place, that it impedes speed, then I'm going to have backlog. And in most cases, that's not a good thing, because the customer might decide, we can't deliver in time. I can also have speed without quality. I can get stuff out. I can get stuff out timely. I can get stuff out in a quick amount of time. But the quality's not there. You'll see that in a lot of products. Things like cell phones, for example. Cell phone companies have a very good customer service center, because the speed's there. They can get the stuff out to the market, but the quality might not be there. There might be a certain amount of yield that they have to mitigate the defects. So quality and speed, Lean and Six Sigma, just to me make perfect sense. To understand that as I increase quality, am I detrimenting speed? If I am, I really got to think of those two things almost like a balance. If I increase my quality, am I decreasing my speed? And if I do, I have to have a balance between those two to make sure that my speed and quality are in balance. And by thinking of those, That helps me to really have a better understanding of my process and what I'm getting to my customer. Benjamin Franklin once said, "The only thing more expensive than education is ignorance." I engage companies every day that have finally come to this realization. This is the point in which these companies start to transform. By completing this module, you have taken a step towards transforming your future and your success. If you have questions or comments about this module or any of the contents, please post them to Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag SSDSI, or you can also call, text, or email me directly. For those of you who are pursuing your Lean Six Sigma White Belt certification, let's go over the requirements. To become formally certified as a Lean Six Sigma White Belt, you must complete all 4 of the Lean Six Sigma White Belt modules. You will also be required to complete a final exam. This exam will be comprised of 20 questions with a passing grade of 75%, or 15 out of 20 questions correctly answered. You will have 40 minutes to complete the exam. Once you pass the exam, you will immediately get access to a formal Lean Six Sigma White Belt certificate. To register for the exam and the immediate issuing of the Lean Six Sigma White Belt certification, upon successfully passing the exam, please browse out to the link provided in the slide. If you're accessing this course through YouTube, then the link to register for the course is in the notes below. You can click any icon that resembles a lowercase I that is inside of a white circle in the upper right hand side of this video. This icon is also a link to the registration page. If you're accessing this video through YouTube, please like this video by clicking on the thumbs up and leave us a comment. Thank you for attending our course, and we hope you will continue with our other informative courses.